Welcome to the Momentum Lifestyle Project podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Ruse, and here at Momentum, we aim to challenge and champion committed men who are ready to take charge of their lives by mastering their mind, optimizing physical potential, and unlocking their power to find their mission. Whilst our work is predominantly with men, we hope that this podcast will provide value to all who choose to listen. So without further ado, let's jump in.
And a huge shout out to our first sponsor here, Be Spunky, the Australian men's health brand designed to support you to be the best you can be. Now, Blake Genoa and myself have been using this for quite some time now and absolutely love it. This product is something that we take every single day and drastically improves our training. But the one thing that I've noticed is my recovery time and the way that I feel the next day after training is so much better when I'm taking Be Spunky than when I'm not. And it is scientifically formulated to support optimum male hormone levels vital for strength, drive, and overall well-being. So big thanks to Be Spunky. You can find the link in the description below.
Julianne, Pixie, welcome to the podcast.
Lovely to be here.
Beautiful. Pix, for those that don't know you or the brilliant work that you do, can you give a little 2-minute spiel, history, what it is that you do?
Absolutely. So I'm a kinesiologist that works predominantly with individuals that want to overcome blocks, either in relationships, predominantly the relationships or their businesses, and within that, like accounting for the relationship with themselves. So when they might have, a lot of the people that I work with have an understanding mentally of the things that they want to shift in their lives and the places that they want to see significant improvements, but they realize that they're starting to hit boundary conditions around that, or to put that into like simple languages, they're just not getting the results that they want to see by showing up. And so I clear energetic and emotional and pattern blocks for them through kinesiology and working with the body and the mind. So it's just about shifting people into integrity and alignment with their goals, no matter what part of that life, what part of their lives that's showing up as a consistent problem or block.
Now, plenty of the roosters that listen to this podcast will have no idea what the fuck you're talking about when it comes to energy. So can you describe that in its simplest form for those that are new to this space?
Like working with the energy?
Yeah.
As in what it looks like in a session, so they can kind of get there. Right. So kinesiology uses muscle testing to track. I think traditionally we used to think that blocks were simply in the mind. And they're not. Our memories, our energy is all housed throughout the body, but the brain makes sense of things and it's consistently getting feedback from the body. So kinesiology will use tracking where is there an energetic block, and that is simply like we are our emotions have an energetic frequency. They affect how we feel. They affect our body language. They affect how we communicate. They're kind of like the unconscious stories that are running underneath our behaviors. And through muscle testing, I'm able to find out where is that stored in the body, how is that affecting you. We're able to find out like what are the stories underneath that are creating the habits or behaviors that you know logically are no longer serving you. And so how that looks if I'm doing sessions online is I just in kinesiology it's called surrogating, but you just ask for 100% energetic permission, and then I literally muscle test on behalf of that and track it through the Chinese meridian system, which for people to understand a little bit better is what an acupuncturist would use when they're tracking in the body. So we use a more generalized version of the same sort of map.
Beautiful. For those, I guess, fellas that are listening in particular, there tends to be this forced willpower that they think is the solution to change. And while there's plenty to be said for consistency and resilience and a bit of grit, there's a lot to be said for the reason or the reasons beneath the fact that we all know better, but we don't necessarily do better. And that's a really frustrating place to be. And often for many of us, there's a level of shame that comes with, fuck, I know I should eat better, I know I should exercise, whatever it may be. Having had a more of a mindset background with NLP, one of the things, speaking firsthand to the work that we've done together over the last 3 years in particular, is even a lot of the work that I've done in terms of understanding the mind and whatever else hasn't been able to clear or help me get the results that I'm looking for. So what does that look like? You kind of explained it then, but if someone was coming to you with a block, what does that process look like? They're coming and they've got the best intention, or, you know, they're feeling maybe an energetic charge. I might even get you to explain that in a sec. What does that process look like that you take them through to shift it?
So my sessions would start with just having a discussion. So getting clear on, like, what is the problem? What's made you come here? What's the bit that's just like, oh, I'm just exhausted trying to find a solution to this, or I'm exhausted finding myself having this conversation with my partner over and over again, or I'm just over doing all the things and not making the amount of money that I want to make, right? And so just through having that discussion, I would be looking for, I guess, similar things that you'd be looking for from NLP perspective, just looking for beliefs, patterns, loaded language. So looking for language that is shameful, that is limiting beliefs around what's possible or what has to be done in order for that thing to happen. And then connecting that with the body. And so that's the piece that's different to just mindset, because you're a mindset wizard. But when we work, there's still parts of just like allowing the body to kind of realize, oh, okay, there's a different way to do this. And I can stay safe while I do it in an easier way. And so what that looks like in a session is connecting. I guess this is the part where my intuition comes in, where I have a felt sense when people are talking. I'm like, there's something in that. And so I know to just follow through to, okay, what's that pattern? How's that affecting it? And I'm looking for, where is the emotional charge? So it might be like, where is I feel that emotional charge in my body. So somebody can be talking and I'll feel, there was something like icky there. It's like a way that I would describe it, just even, you know, in my own body. I'll be like, something felt sticky about the way that they said that. And so it's really like, you're looking for the piece of information that essentially weakens the body. That's how kinesiology would think about it. Where's the story that doesn't allow the energy to flow easily? And when I say energy, I'm really like talking about the energetic frequency that runs behind beliefs. That's like, hey, this gets to be easy. I get to expand into this. I get to grow and do this. I get to be loved and make money. Whereas often we'll separate things and say, if I need to make money, it means I'm going to shut myself off from love. And so you're looking at all of those places where we've separated things and compartmentalized them, and how can we bring them into more holistic sense of, well, how about you get to have all of it? And then what we're essentially doing is getting the mind, the mindset, the concept, the goal, and the energetic communication and how it flows in the body to be on the same course, right? Because the unconscious, as we all know, its job is to keep us safe. And so we'll bring up like those unconscious beliefs as sabotage or problems or things not working out easily, because our unconscious beliefs are built around, well, it's not safe to do that. So it's working with the body and the mind to get that in alignment.
So for those that don't understand an emotional charge, what does that look like? And obviously your intuition plays a massive part in that. And I think having experienced it myself plenty of times in terms of my own emotional charges, which we continue to work through, but also now being in a position where I can also notice other people's emotional charges quite easily. What is emotional charge, and where would you likely kind of see it, or how would you identify it in someone?
Well, it can show up in different ways in different people. Charge kind of gives you the idea that it might be like super active or highly charged, but actually it can be undercharged as well. So it's anywhere where we're overexpressed or overactive, or we're underexpressed or underactive. And that can look like, you don't have to look very far to see it at the moment, right? We're in a highly charged, highly polarized world where lots of people have opinions about things. And if we really sat down and, we're able to sit in a peaceful sense and have a conversation with people around, well, where does that belief come from? Like what's formed that? Why do you believe that? Oftentimes they probably couldn't logically or calmly work you through it. It comes from a reaction to something rather than a response. So they're the places where we're operating from. It just is that way. It just has to be. Or we feel uncomfortable when we are challenged on something, or where we're it shows up everywhere. It's like the places that we react out of anger, or we snap and cut someone off, or we lose our temper at kids, or we're frustrated by our partner. They're all places where we've added extra meaning to what is ostensibly a simple interaction or engagement or conversation. And we've taken offense, we've adjusted the meaning, we've read into their tone of voice. And all of that is normally unconscious. Before we know it, we're in an argument or a disagreement, or we've shut down, protected ourselves, closed off from them, separated, and there's just a discomfort or a disconnection from them. And so that would be the repressive expression of a charge. And so when I'm in conversation with clients and we're first trying to kind of unpack an area of their lives, I'm filling into where I can sense that language has a stronger energetic frequency to neutral. Because if we're in a place of self-acceptance and a calm response, we'll tend to not have as many of those. We can discuss things that are potentially polarizing and sit in opposition to someone in opinion without sitting in opposition to them as a human being. But we don't see a lot of that in the world right now. What we see is, you're different to me, you're over there. And then there's just hate being thrown around all over the place, or charges or projections or judgment, which is
at the moment you think there's a bit of that going around there.
Just a little bit.
So let's give a few real life examples of that, because I'm pretty charged at the moment, although you have helped me kind of neutralize some of my stuff.
Yeah.
But let's give a few examples on that, just so people can experience it in real life. And I've known for a long time that I've got an issue with mainstream media, big pharma, and the government. And those three have literally dominated as a collective over the last 18 months. So from your side of things, and we're still working through it, it just continues to get more and more layered. What does it look like? And I'm happy for you to be completely transparent. What does it look like so that someone can go, oh, fuck, that's how I respond as well? How have you seen that play out in my, at times, quite strong rage that I have?
Well, we've started to unpack this because we had both noticed that sometimes on social media that there was, rather than being in a neutral place and sharing information from a place of, oh, hey, are you guys aware of this? This is another piece of information that could be valuable for you in your decision making, because we've all had to make decisions about our body and our autonomy and our health and our well-being and the way that we want to move forward with them. And for you, there was a lot of frustration and charge around big pharma, and there was a lot of, they're all fucking idiots. And so the minute that we start to group people together and decide who they are, decide what their motivation is, decide what their value as human beings or their morals, we're in a reaction and we're not in truth anymore. Because yes, are there some manipulative people in that industry? Of course. There's a lot of money and motivation behind it. Is everyone in that industry motivated? Absolutely not. That can't possibly be the truth, right? And so when we distort and generalize information, we know what we're really looking for is, what is the story that I have told myself that has allowed me to do that? And oftentimes it comes from something that happened to us, an experience that happened to us. It can be, particularly at the moment, there's a lot of triggers around control. So the government's suddenly taking a lot of control and autonomy out of our lives, never mind the body decision, I've been in lockdown in Melbourne. And if at times in our past that we've not had control, particularly as children, that situation was taken out of our hands because we didn't have choice, then there can be unconscious reactions to things that are happening now that are not entirely about what's happening now. And that's what we start to unpack and go into. But the minute that we're deciding people are idiots, or they're out to get us, or their motivation is evil, or there's no goodness in it, we're 100% in reaction. Yeah.
Well, it's and at some stage I'll apologize to every single person in mainstream media, big pharma and the government, but that's exactly what I did. And I've got friends in all three of those industries, and I just blanketed them all as corrupt, evil people that I wanted to stab in the neck with a pen, when the reality is that
really moderate thoughts.
Just some moderate thoughts that I had. But the reality is as you said, just generalize them as a whole, and have for a long time, but only really, one, have had the level of awareness and understanding to move through it, but two, obviously it's been thrown in my face heavily over the last 18 months, which has created a strong charge and a good opportunity for me to work through it. So for blokes, of which you work with plenty of them now, what are the most common kind of themes that you see, and this might be quite a hard one to answer, but what are the most common themes that you see where there's a emotional charge, whether it's an overexpression or an underexpression, that's potentially blocking them from having a more fulfilling life, or maybe even a more fulfilling relationship?
So the men that I work with, it's come through in there's a number of areas. Sometimes I work with men around career, and there can be a lot of emotional stuff that comes up for men around providing, and then having the freedom to decide what they want to do, and still managing, being responsible for a house, or providing safety, or looking after their kids, and being able to kind of transition careers or change something about their lifestyle, and then having a lot of internal angst around who they provide for financially. So there can be a lot of issues around that. And then also relationship stuff, comes up where they, well, it can tend to be in one of two different directions. So it can either be they lose their temper too quickly, or can kind of lash out or say things out of anger, or they can get feedback that they're detached and removed and kind of numbed out. A lot of the sessions that I do with men, the first few are just about connecting them into their bodies. It's very normal for men, in the way that they're raised, in the way that they're taught, in the way that they just innately operate, is to be very logical and rational. And when we're only accessing our choices and our decisions in life from our brain, you're missing out on a whole other aspect of being able to fully feel what's happening in your life, fully be present to the wins when they happen. And also being able to access your intuition. We often talk about intuition and automatically defer to females. Men can be very intuitive, but they often bypass that to logic. And so, yeah, a lot of the sessions can be about just going, how do you feel about that? And normalizing, connecting to your feelings and opening that up. And it's really beautiful to watch what comes from that, actually, because it just creates a lot more ease and a lot more trust within their decisions. Because oftentimes when we're making decisions from just our heads, what happens is masculines start to go into this our brain is our most conditioned part of us. And we start to go into like sort of positive, negatives, data cataloging. And we can just go around in circles when we're in there if we're finding a decision really difficult. And when we can kind of feel into, okay, these are the things that I know. Now, if I'm present to my feelings or to my body, or just I kind of listen to the pull from life. If I was to actually hold space for that, oftentimes that is the piece that will allow a final decision to be made with ease. And so you stop wasting so much energy. It's going over and over and over the same things. It starts to build a relationship with your own like innate pull in life, and that builds self-trust. And self-trust is huge. It's really, self-trust is a huge part in the leadership piece. And when men are able to feel into that, they lead their families, they lead their relationships from a much more embodied place. And that is really attractive. And oftentimes that's what women are looking for.
Yeah. One of the things that you spoke of, which if men are new to the space, they might not be able to see the difference. But one of the differences, or it'd be good to get clarity around the difference between neutral and numb. Because for a lot of blokes, they're like, oh, I'm charged, so let's just numb it out. But what's the difference between neutral and numb?
That's a really good question. Neutral is, so how I would describe it is, neutral is you're still open and present to the person, and you're still happy to engage in conversation, and you can feel, okay, something's still going on here. Do we need to talk about this further? Or I'm really present and I'm relaxed in my body. Numb is we're not fighting about it, and everything's okay, but actually we're also not really getting to the core of what's going on here. We're not talking about it anymore. We've now pushed it away. And it often leads to distraction behaviors, like, there's the whole list, right? This is the numbing out is a lot of part of what can lead into sort of addictive behaviors, like endless scrolling, watching porn, gaming, going out for beers with the boys who'll never ask you about what's actually going on, because that's a safe space, because you don't really talk about it, and just sweeping things under the carpet. But what happens when we do that is they come up. That's when we find ourselves arguing about who did the dishes and who didn't do the dishes and who's going to do the school run. And it's never really about those things. It's about all the stuff that we've numbed out about that we're not really talking about. And so numbness creates disconnection. It creates this sort of, you mightn't be fighting, it mightn't be intense, but also we can't numb out on one end of the spectrum. And so this is the thing for any men that are listening, is like, really sit with this and feel into or think back on your recent history with your family or your partner or just within yourself. You might be saying everything's fine because you're not exploding, there's not a lot of anger, or there's not a lot of highly charged, uncomfortable situations. But are you experiencing heart-opening situations? Are you really, if you're in a relationship, can you really feel in your body that you love your partner? Like, do you know up here you love them, or can you actually feel it in your body? Like, can you feel how good life is? Can you feel the pure enjoyment you have when you're with your mates and you're all laughing about something? Are you really connected? Like, you might be not experiencing all the negative things, but oftentimes, actually always, when we're numbed out here, we're also not experiencing the positive things to the fullness of their expression. And that's the awful thing about numbing out, is it makes us live in this wedge where we're kind of numbed out to just the broadness of feeling and like being really nourished by our lives emotionally. And that's the piece that, if you're not sure if you're numbed out, have a think. When was the last time that like you felt your heart, that you felt really grateful for your life, or like you really could just be fully present with your kids or your partner and just actually really be in that moment and be deeply nourished by it on an emotional level? And if the answer there is no, then there's a bit of work to be done for sure. Yeah.
I think if you can't work it out yourself, you could definitely ask your partner, and they'll give you some pretty quick feedback as to whether 100%, you're numb or not.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Yeah. So talk me through, I want to get into healing the feminine, which was a very insightful process that you and I went through last year. But in order for someone to do that, when they're working with you, they need to go through Spiral. So give us the rundown on Spiral and what that is and how that works, and then we'll go into healing the feminine.
So Spiral is, honestly, it's an amazing 8-week journey. The more and the more and the more of them I do, the more magic and like potent that journey gets. And it's a deep deconditioning. So if we go back to when I was saying we pick up a lot of our conditioning when we're kids, that's why it's unconscious. We're just in that hypnotic absorbing stage when we're 0 to 7, which a lot of the guys would know because that's part of your work. And we don't even know what we've absorbed there, right? Even if it's good, we can make weird meanings out of things. And like the overachievers, right? Because everything's good. I've got everything I ever wanted. I'm like kicking, I'm kicking goals, but am I nourished by it? Or have I done that because that was the only way I ever received attention or love as a kid? And so, we can we anchor in meaning out of all the experiences from our childhood. And what Spiral does is it works with a number of like maps and models, predominantly the chakra system, spiral dynamics, and the scale of consciousness. And we are deconditioning the meaning, the stories, and the patterns that you've attached to 22 core emotions, so that you you raise your level of consciousness. Now, for people listening who are like, what is like, I'm not out looking for more consciousness or higher consciousness. That's not really my goal. To explain it in practical terms as to why that's beneficial is, if we're running emotions like shame, guilt, and dogma, right, which is the very first week of spiral, they're really heavy, low vibrating emotions. So if you're trying to grow a business or connect with your partner and you're in a shame vibration, right, because you might feel like you're not successful enough, or you might not, intimacy and closeness might feel like uncomfortable for you. Or you might have, I don't know, even body image issues. That emotion makes shifting out of that situation and creating change or moving into more of the situations of success that you want makes it really hard, because we don't want to be seen when we're in shame. We don't want to be seen in the world. So if we're trying to grow a business and we're running an energetic pattern that's like, it feels way too vulnerable to be seen, that's going to be way harder, right? And dogma is like, what are all the rules that have you wedged into, I have to do it this way, otherwise it won't work, right? So when we clear all that out of the system, it's like a giant permission slip to be yourself. And it connects you to your choices about how you want to live your life, rather than living from the default patterns that you picked up in your childhood. And from that place, anything is possible. And anything else that you engage in, any other personal development that you engage in, any other growth that you engage in, you're engaging in it from a place of having way more energetic connection to yourself as an individual, and not running nearly as many sabotage patterns. So it's huge. It's a big journey, and it will free up a lot of the heaviness in the body that makes people say, I don't know what I feel. I don't really know, what does that even mean? I don't know how to connect to that. So it's a really beautiful self-reflection about, at each level, it's like, okay, if you're not running those emotions, what's possible now? And so each level, there's like integration tasks that say, okay, let's try it out. Let's go out into the world and do the things that you've been telling yourself you can't do because you've been stuck in these emotional patterns.
That was a very good description. So from there, what so I'm writing notes. What's the point of the feminine collapse? And then we'll go into some real life examples around how cooked I was when it came to the feminine and how things are slightly better.
Yeah. So a quantum collapse is essentially when we take the energy of, the beliefs and the projections that we have around, we can do it around anything, but I would always recommend starting with the masculine and feminine, which we would normally use the mother or the father as the thing that we have. Really, our parents are our masculine or our feminine archetype, right? And actually this gets embedded at a whole other level when we get into relationships. People often find, oh, it's fine, or even marriage. Like they can be, oh, we were fine and then we got married, and like so many stories got triggered because we've observed and watched our parents, and we've kind of just layered it in as, oh, that's what it is to be a woman. That's what it is to be a man. Oh, that's what I look for in a man, or that's what I want to look for or avoid in a woman. And so we tend to either be in avoidance and rejection of them, which creates its whole own set of problems, or we pedestal them and we look for that, and we kind of can block out negative traits, right? And when we do a quantum collapse on the feminine or the masculine, like for the feminine, you are collapsing any of the stories and behaviors that you have attached to the female that keep you in a either in a pedestaling, right? So it keeps you in your little boy energy because that's the mother, or that's what keeps you out of really being able to hold your energy in your adult, strong masculine, or in rejection of it. We're pulling you into like toxic repeats of unhealthy patterns or behaviors that you maybe ran with your mom. Yeah. And so that can happen a lot, right? So if a man's now, this is why the rites of passage stuff is so important, because men can run little boy energy around their moms right up into adulthood so much. And then suddenly, you know, start projecting that energy onto their girlfriends or wives. And so we really want to, when we do a lot of this deconditioning work and cleaning up the stories and they're really projections, like what are we projecting onto the feminine or the masculine? When we collapse those, it's like it's an intense process in one area where they then get to say, well, what women am I really attracted to, or what do I want to experience in a relationship? What are the qualities that, now that I'm not running a whole load of unconscious stories and projections, how would I actually like to be present for my partner? What would I like to communicate from her that I would like to receive? Some men find that so difficult to ask to receive from their partner, right? Because their own internal feminine is totally shut down. So it allows you to completely reorganize your relationship with the feminine internally, your own internal feminine, and then of course the qualities that you look for or project onto in a partner.
So talking of little boy energy and projecting and having lots of baggage, you and I did this process in September last year.
Yeah.
And for me, my relationship as a result of it is a lot better with my mum. But to be fair, up until that point was super challenging. And I think one of the challenges that I faced, that literally any bloke that works with you is potentially going to face as well, is because it's been your reality for so long, you don't realize that it's not healthy. So the breakdown of all my relationships where I was projecting little boy energy, you know, a whole bunch of issues that were showing up, you just assume that's life and that's your reality, and that it, you know, often the problem lies with them, only to realize that it actually lies with you, which is so hard to believe sometimes. But that was a real eye-opener for me when we did that. So for the next few minutes, I'd love to kind of run through, just so guys have got an example of how it might be showing up, and also potentially a result of after. And we've got a couple of little notes here on the side. We did this in September, so it's been 14 months, and definitely still got plenty of stuff to work on around the feminine. But a lot of the stories that we work through just feel like a different person to, you know, who I am now. So what did you, and let's just be fully transparent and open, what did you notice when we went through this process around my energy with the feminine, and obviously in particular my mum pre, and, you know, because you and I work so closely, what and how does it look slightly different post?
Well, when you first came to me about this, there was like the problem that you had identified was, and through talking and kind of just drawing that out, was that you people would be attracted to you, right? And there would be this attraction intention. You'd be attracted to this person that you'd want to be with, because you were in your masculine, and because you were a larrikin and good fun. And then you were explaining that when you got into relationships over a period of time, you fell into them, and rather than holding yourself in your strong masculine, which is what they'd found so attractive about you in the beginning, your energy went into that sort of leaky, falling into them, trying to seeking their approval. And a big part of it was losing your drive for work. So that's, you know, healthy, strong masculine, which is purpose driven and grounded and direct and, you know, that sort of penetrating energy. And I'm not just talking about sexual, it's that like cutting through life. Yeah. And that doesn't have to be big externally, but if it's just contained within you, it is very attractive to the feminine. And that all seemed to fall away. And probably a little bit of what I think language that was used was kind of like this, it's not very nice language, but I think you talked about it as being like sloppy, and we talked about it being leaky energy. So instead of it being, so that sort of strong masculine energy is quite magnetic for the feminine. And so a lot of the polarity would then collapse, you know, that polarity being one's in the feminine, one's in the masculine, those two kind of draw together energetically, and it creates a sexual charge as well. And when the man is not in his masculine, and it's not that he can't be in his feminine as well, but it's you'd want to be in your masculine, or one of you, that's projection, if you're going to be in your feminine, right, as a man, then you're going to, for the polarity to be maintained, you're probably going to get more of a masculine or alpha female, right? Because we want that polarity to keep the sexual charge and to keep the connection between. Otherwise, you can still be in a successful relationship, but it will probably be more on a friendship basis, right? Which for some people, that's fine. That's enough. That's great. But if you want the polarity and the charge, you want, ideally, if the man wants to be conscious of, if he's with a feminine woman, right, then he's going to need to hold his masculine. And that's drive and purpose. And yeah, so I think you had described it as like falling, literally, like your structure, how you lived, how you operated, your energy fell into the female rather than being in love, being in your energy, being in your masculine. You felt like it was like a dissolving of your own internal energetic structure. And so, and also then when, you know, we worked on your relationship with your mom, there was a lot of like anger there. There was a lot of rejection and I sort of suppose
there was rage. There was rage also.
Yeah, it was definitely rage. And so when we did the quantum collapse, which was pretty full on, things started to shift immediately, didn't they? Yeah. And also, you know, we had looked at when we have leaky energy, we'll often look for hits from different places. And that sort of, you had noticed that was playing out on social media, that there wasn't any game playing per se, but there was an energetic enjoyment of being like spotted or admired or engaged with from the feminine. Yeah. And so if we don't have clean energy around that, we'll often look for little energetic hits and we'll say, oh, it wasn't me. They just, you know, messaged me. It's like, no, if you're not in integrity in your energy, those things will show up because there's space for them to land.
That was probably 14 months on now, or whatever it is. That's probably the one that stood out to me the most. Was, and I actually spoke to my, I'm still quite close with my ex, and it's a really nice friendship that we've got now. We're actually speaking about it the other day, of that didn't create a safe space for my partners because I was looking for acceptance, approval, acknowledgement in the feminine, and at the same time struggled, and I think you remember this moment as well, struggled to really appreciate the feminine. You know, like, I can't remember what you said, but we had that moment where I realized I didn't appreciate the feminine fully, and that would make heaps of sense, you know, looking at the relationship I had with my mum. But
absolutely,
you know, when you're leaky as with your energy, and looking for those little hits, you know, mainly through social media at the time, you know, that acceptance, approval, acknowledgement from the feminine. And then I'm lacking appreciation in, you know, the amazing partners that I had. It's not an amazing dynamic for the relationship. And, you know, one of the things that was a recurring theme, and it was when you and I worked on it that it really stood out, was like, there's no safety in that, because whether it was, you know, on a deep level, I knew I was looking for those hits, but on a, you know, conscious level, I didn't think anything of it. And I was just kind of, you know, going about my business. But that really created an unsafe environment, and one that I don't think any female would really want to be in if their partner's got mummy issues where they're seeking approval, acknowledgement, acceptance from other females as well. It's not a healthy environment. So I think the thing as well, you know, with energy work and even some of the work that, you know, I do as well, is often this stuff just falls away. You know, you don't necessarily, unless you're really conscious, you don't necessarily notice it. But what I did notice was, you know, for probably 9 out of the last 12 months, I've had someone manage my social. And that was significant for me, because that's where I used to get all my hits from the feminine. So, you know, they just fell away, the need for acceptance, approval, and acknowledgement. And someone else handled my social media. And as a result, like, that part's fallen away. And you and I are still working, and there's other elements that, you know, get to be worked through. But that was a real big piece for me as well. So fucking amazing process. And then we get to heal the masculine next, which will be another process in itself.
Yeah, so we just came across that one, didn't we? We suddenly realized, and that's the thing. I mean, it is worth it. And these are the parts where I'm just, you know, even myself consistently learning that masculine and feminine are very much dovetailed. And I saw this when I did my own quantum collapse on my parents, that I waited for quite a while to do the second one. And you know, if you're clear on the feminine, of course your masculine stuff's going to come up and like show up. So it's really worth it to kind of do the two. And then you can do, you know, then you can kind of get creative with the quantum clears after that. But those two energies, they show up in everything. No, they really do. They show up in lots of places in our lives, not just show up within ourselves, they show up in all our relationships. And they can show up in work, in the workplaces, and like, how do we tap into our creativity? And like, you know, women going into their masculine to think they have to be in that to be successful, you know, they can show up in lots of different ways in our lives. So it's really worth it to do the work on those fundamental pillars in our lives, so that we can start to show up for the really creating the life that we want. I mean, look at your life from where it is 2 years ago. I mean, it's even last year, you know, it's really magic. And I've noticed myself, I mean, I do this work myself as well. I work with another coach, because yes, I have the tools to take myself through it, but it's so much easier when somebody holds space for you to go deeper into the work, because there will be resistance there. And your life can change really rapidly when you work on the energetic level, like really rapidly. And then when you go into the, you know, for you working with mindset and working so well with mindset, if you're working with people who are in energetic alignment for you when you're doing mindset, and there's less unconscious resistance, the mindset stuff just gets accelerated as well. You can just be like, oh, I get it. Right. Okay.
It's one of the reasons we're super fortunate in the work that we do together, because there's plenty of work that I can do from mindset point of view. But a lot of the people that I'm working with, which are now your clients as well, you know, are getting stuck on that energetic level. So, and just to really simplify it, I guess, is keeping in mind, and this is generally how I think about things as well, of like the 5 bodies: physical, mental, emotional, energetic, and spiritual. I can't do the energy work. And that's, you know, produced some of my best results working with you as well. So super important for the guys to understand the energy work, but also to get into it, I think, as well. Every bloke should be doing it. Pix, where do the people find you?
On social media. I'm on social media just as my name, Julie Ann Kelly Wellbeing, or my website, juliannekelly.com.au, to read a little bit more.
Brilliant.
Absolute pleasure. You know how much I love talking about this stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Peace.